Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Captain's Academy, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Kuat Drive Yards Nebulon B Escort Frigate. Nebulon B is a mid-game spawn warship with upgrade potential to carry the player to late game, and in some instances, in-game material. Although not wielding a platform able to show out a good number of turrets. Cap is about 24, 26, something to that effect. It does have mounts for a plethora of player-mounted weapons, positions for mounted weapons. Before we get started, let's go ahead and take a look at our power and CPU upgrade options. We have our processor room here, which is reinforced with combat steel, 360-degree locations. We are coming in at a Core 6. 4 advanced and 1 basic, so vanilla players can refund the basic. Reforged players will be able to throw on an additional advanced as well as the 2 improved. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Alright, so that would fulfill our Core 9 for Reforged players. So past this point, we have plenty of options for auxiliary cores as well as quantums. So at this point, if we wanted to, we could... Well, actually, before we get started on that, let's go ahead and take a look at all of our current placements. So we'll just walk along, filling up here. It's designed to house up to a Core 23 using these placements here. As I alluded to earlier, if we're not satisfied with that, if for some reason we feel we need more additional CPU capacity, then we could just go ahead and start filling up the center line. But I find that with upgraded weapons, Tier 2, all the shield parts, generators, progenitor shield, that sort of thing, I was finding at Core 23 it was sufficient to run everything. So that would fulfill all of our CPU needs. Now, we have a couple options here for power generation. We have our forward engineering room. So what this can do right out of the gate, this can house some additional advanced generators. 4 in total here with a 1 block space in between them. If we feel that we want to add some additional armor between them, that's an option. Okay, so that's one thing. This is the forward engineering room. Now we also have another engineering room, the main engineering, as we go down here. So for Reforged players, this can house a fusion reactor, if we want to do that. It could also house a large shield part, be that a charger or capacitor. That's also a thing. For vanilla players, you could provision this to a couple of cargo systems, maybe one big one. Perhaps put in some additional farms. So if we wanted to, we get this place down. Now, what we can do is double back to the forward engineering house and remove these. So now we have the more efficient CPU system in place, and this could be provision for the large shield part. Moving forward to the forward auxiliary room, we have a couple options here, including power generation usage. We could go for, on either side, a pair of advanced. If for some reason, perhaps it could be a situation where we want to use this room for a shield capacitor, a large shield capacitor, as well as the other one. and then try and offset some of the CPU cost, or I'm sorry, some of the energy costs in other locations. So, so this could work there for a pair. And what we could also do is take out the LCD there, and this will give us space for 8 additional large generators. Okay. And also the center line there, we could place an additional one. Maybe get rid of the deco here. Now, if we didn't want to do that, the forward auxiliary room does serve a couple additional purposes other than just power generation. Now, it could operate as a decoy system, so perhaps using one of the, or maybe even 2 of the small generators, we could place those there, and then we would just armor up this entire room. You just fill this thing up, keep going, take down the deco, and encase this thing, so this would operate as a decoy. And just keep going to fill this thing up, so increase the rigidity of the staying power of this thing should there be a situation where the shields drop. Right, so that is one option. Now, if we're more of a not really concerned about engaging enemies too much, maybe just kind of want to like perhaps have it as a general purpose warship, then we could go ahead and just utilize this as farm plots. And that's that. So take note, you want to, with the initial spawn in here, you're going to have that 45-degree angle block. So that'll have to be removed, and obviously we place that there, and that would make it airtight. Now, if you didn't do that, this is going to cause an air breach. So you need to seal that off on either side. Alright, so that would conclude the forward auxiliary room, as well as the power generation options. And so let's actually take another look here with the room. So we have some additional options. This spacing here, this is going to be used for perhaps a fusion reactor. If we wanted to do a fusion reactor, then this would have to be removed as well as the light. Now, open up our 5x5. Ideally, it's provisioned for one of the larger shield parts. Now, we do have, even if that's placed down, we do have placement for a couple of, I'm sorry, large shield, large generators. That's what we're looking for. Now, at this point, if we wanted to remove the LTD, we could, or perhaps even 2 of them, we could strap a couple across there. So we have some additional power here, and then we still have placement for one of the large shield parts. And so there's a couple options here. Again, it's preferable to use the large shield part here, and then the fusion generator down at the main engineering room. That seems to favor the balance as far as like the weight distribution and stuff like that. That seems to favor that layout better. You know, once you put the fusion reactor there, it kind of tips some of the performance away from what would be ideal by placing it here. Right, so that's our power generation options and our CPU. So let us look at now our shield parts. Speaking of. Okay. So again, as mentioned before, the forward engineering here, this is designed to accommodate a large shield part for reforging players. It could also be converted to storage for vanilla players. And that would be our setting there. So as previously mentioned, there's spacing for additional power generation if that's needed. So you could potentially, rather than having a fusion reactor in the other room, you could go for double shield capacitors and then try and offset that power consumption by running some power here and in the forward auxiliary room. So that would be our big shield part right there. Now transitioning to the hangar, what we're looking at here is a number of mountings. Should be able to house everything here. Take note, this section that is closest to the forward bit, the production area, if you will. Now, with the storage here, the containers are at 235. That's these systems here. So this pocket here could double as a shield placement, or you could stretch out some additional cargo containers to fulfill that up to 320. So that could be something that you do for a vanilla setting. Or maybe in the case of Reforged Eden, maybe with some particular configurations, maybe you don't need 2 shield parts, and you could just go ahead and top that off there. Same thing here. If you're a vanilla player, you could just generate some supplemental cargo containers. You'd fill this whole thing up with some extensions, and then drop your container block there, whatever that be, cargo, ammo, harvest, or whatever. Although, so for the shield parts, we're going to want to lay this thing down. So that could be our setting there. Some of these rotations are more favorable to placement, so keep that in mind if maybe you're getting a little guff trying to place them. That's the way to go. Okay, so for this section here, staying with this whole area of the forward section, so shield house is going to be for the medium-sized shield parts, and then shield bank is for the smaller ones. So underneath that, you're going to take out these 2 blocks, and that'll be a placement there. And same thing for this bit. That'll take care of that for this forward section. So for the actual shield part itself, we have our placement here. Now I couldn't come up with some sort of configuration where I was happy with the glass configuration and given some way to access it. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pop off a piece of glass in order to get access to the shield. And once you do that, you'll have options to place it. So just keep in mind you got to replace that glass if you want a full coverage there for protection. So this is our warp drive set in place already, so you could just straight upgrade that once you get to it, your Pentax tank. Shield house. This is going to be for another shield part, medium size. Reforged Eden players. Here also for vanilla, this could be turned into some additional storage if we want to do that. But for Reforged Eden players, there's our placement. And so what we have now, moving to the aft section of the hangar. So we have our shield banks just above the hangar door there. And that's going to be able to house 2 of the small shield parts. So we're going to do that. Take these blocks out using the symbols as guides. And that will fulfill all of our small shield part placement. So moving forward, we also do have one more center line shield placement. So let's see. Okay, we're full on that. So this is also laying down. So that puts us at 6, and then so we need 2 more. Now these other 2, there's going to be a vertical setting. Just keep a lookout for the shield house. Again, shield house is going to represent the medium-sized shield placements. Shield bank is for the smalls. I didn't want to do something for the larges because that's kind of determined on what the player wants to do as far as like placement between fusion generator and all that sort of thing. Okay, so that's all of our shield options. Now let's look at some of the other features of the hangar area. Starting with constructors and deconstructors and all that sort of thing. So this is an easy tell here. You could have a constructor there just like that. So this back section here, this could house 2 additional constructors, or you could go deconstructors. It's just whatever you want to do. Okay, so that's filled up there. That's all good to go. So we do have a spot here for a repair bay. That's what the crosshair is, so that would fulfill that. Now for the repair terminal, there's a number of places you could put it. Perhaps maybe one of the better options is to go on either side of one of these containers there, so it's kind of snug and you have access to the repair. Now the hangar it can hold a couple of smaller craft, like some interceptors or small fighters or something to that effect. But there will be some space later on in the video. I'll show you how to upgrade this thing to accommodate some more parking on the external side using the solar panels. So pretty slick way to do that. Now, okay, so that pretty much fulfills all of our stuff here for the hangar placement. Taking a note, we have our cantina here, general quarters. We have a bed here for single player if people want to sleep. A couple containers there. Full medical suite, of course. Okay. So moving along to the aft section of the ship. This will bring us to the ITD room, which is short for instantaneous travel device. That's what it is. I had to remember. That's so that's like a Star Wars jargon for a teleportation device. That's actually a thing, and that's what they call it. So T, that's our big tell there for our device placement. So once we have that placed down, we're going to go ahead and activate our devices and go to Signal Logic and scroll down to Teleporter. All right. And so now it's set up to this sensor here. Once you step on it, that's the only time it'll activate. It was a suggestion to have it tie in with turning off the shields when you step on it as well, but that was kind of sketchy on, like, maybe some people wouldn't be able to figure that out. And maybe it would run into a situation where they accidentally turn off their shields. Leave them in a position where they're getting clapped unshielded. So decided to opt against that. Alright, so that would conclude all of our internal device placement, CPU, generators, shield parts, that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and move on to some thrusters. Quite a few options here. The bulk of it is going to be located in the back. This is predominantly where your thrust is going to come from. A couple other options here in the midsection, but mainly for the back. Okay, so starting out, let's go ahead and take a look at our drive thrusters. So for the rear section, we have one additional placement here. That's going to be the, let's see, so using the light textures here as a guide, this is going to be your cutout. All right. So let's open up that drive thruster. Go for this one right here, so you're nice and flush. Of course, you want to change the color. Probably want to go for that center darker texture. There you go. All right, so that's forward thrust for the aft section fulfilled. For dorsal thrust, we have these two for drives. I'm sorry, for advanced thrusters. Oops. Okay, so yeah, once we breach that top section, that's all we got to do before we can place that down. So that's good. Moving on to strafe. We've got one additional drive on each side. So this inset section here, this is going to be your tail for the cutout. Just push back till you get to those X's. You don't want to go past that. Probably want to go for this one right here. This is going to be a better aesthetic option. And there it is. So same thing, you just change the color on that to get the match. Okay, so for reverse, we have a center line drive thruster here. Get a good look at that. Should be quite obvious. You just want to remove these blocks here. All right. There it is. Okay, so that's the bulk of everything here. Now we have one lift thrust. That's going to be mirroring the opposite side of this one here. It's a pretty easy tell. Alrighty. There it is. Okay, so this should be pretty sufficient for all of your upgraded needs. I've tested it with full load tier 2 weapons and stuff like that. Now, if you're still feeling in a want for some additional thrust, it could go. So we'd want to take out this center line section here. So that could house some mediums there for just that little bit more thrust. Or you could punch through this thin block layer right there and place down some larges if you want to do that. Right, so that's the whole thruster, rear section thruster housing completed. Moving forward, we have a couple options. So if we feel that our forward acceleration isn't sufficient, we have a couple things here to look at. So moving forward to this midsection here, what we want to look at is, so this is using this bottom section here as a reference. You want to look at these two symbols here. This would mark out a drive thruster placement. Or you could go for, if you don't want to disrupt the aesthetic of it too much, you could just do a pair of advance. So let's look at that setting first. So we're going to take that double thin, we're going to take down that half layer there. And that block. And then, so that should be able to fulfill I don't want to do that one. That looks a little bit better. It's kind of more consistent. Okay, so that's okay. Still kind of say like this bar here, that's somewhat consistent with that. So that's not too bad. That would be our advanced thruster placement if we wanted to do drive to be a little more beefy. Just going to continue to take out these blocks here, take off that thin block, and then that should open that up. It's not too bad. Again, it's kind of consistent with the flow of that midsection. Okay, so that would conclude all of our thruster placement. Should be pretty robust with that. It's kind of deceptive. It is not necessarily a bigger ship. It's just some of it is tied up in some of the characteristics of it, like the long neck here. There's not a lot going on there. This is all a container run. So it's not so much weight. It's just really this is the bulk of the ship minus this bit. So it's something almost like a smaller ship. So you'll find that you should get some pretty good response with the pitch roll and yaw once you've placed in all of the thrusters and even including some of the weapon upgrades, which is what we'll take a look at here next. So first thing, let's take a look at our radar placement. This is what's recommended here by me, but that's entirely up to you. I think that looks good. It's out of the way. Not using up a critical turret spot. Yeah, it's pretty good there. All right, so as previously alluded to, like the turret placement isn't that crazy as far as like the turret count. Now, the player-mounted weapons, that's where this thing can shine if you're interested in like a 24 weapon suite. That could be a thing. Before we get rolling on that, let's take a look at our turret placement. Be contributing to our forward here. This is another placement, or optionally, this could go for a artillery placement. So that might leave you with an obstruction there of that turret placement, so keep that in mind. This placement here, this will be good for a point defense, miniguns, or flak, or whatever your point defense preference is. Alright, so there's that. This could be utilized here. You could maybe go for another artillery, possibly. Yeah, that could be an artillery placement. It's going to be asymmetrical, so keep that in mind. Let's see, we have a shot. Yeah, I think we got a shot there, just barely. Maybe move it over. What I do like to do is, so this could actually be a landing pad for some smaller SVs. Close to your control station here, going up. So easy in and out. Kind of a smaller landing pad if you want to do that, if you don't want to use it for turrets. So let's move forward. We have our initial spawn here. It's kind of given a clue as to where our placement is. So you could 5 out on either side of this vertical band, or perhaps maybe you wanted to mix in an artillery size weapon. Could go with that. Let's still leave you placement for another small one there. Pretty neaty. Top section here, we have 2 additional placements. And so this little bit right here, we're going to have to remove some blocks. This light texture, that's going to be the center point of your placement. So go ahead and remove these smaller blocks. And there we go. If you wanted to entertain it, you could also place another one up here. You're just absolutely starving for additional turrets. Something like that. So I'll give you a forward firing line. All right, so now we could place an additional one here. This could be pretty good for maybe like a broadside or point defense. This is a potential placement here. I'm going to do that. So this array here, these would be able to contribute to like a broadside or rear coverage. Now this section here, we could mount a pair. Maybe even 2 pair. Could go something like that. Probably want to do that. That'll make it look a little more legit. Yeah. So there's that. I think that's pretty much it as far as the turret placement. That should cover everything. But you know, I'm sure y'all will be creative and find some additional placements. Yeah, I should pretty much do that. So let's go ahead and look at our mounted weapons. Okay, so the big tell for this forward section is going to be the antennas. We want to remove those. That'll open up some of our center line stuff. Same thing here, just keep popping the antennas. Okay, so that's what, 5 right out of the gate? Take note that this is like the lower midsection. This is going to be the forward bridge area. So if you're wanting to mount weapons for a first-person precision fire thing, you kind of want to stay around this radius right here as far as your weapon mounts. Now, in that regard, our tell is going to be these half-size curved round blocks. These are going to be the things that we want to remove. You're not going to be touching any of these full-size blocks. That's going to be covering up rooms, and nor do you want to remove like these half-size 45-degree angle blocks. That's also contributing to a room, stretching that back there. So let's get started on removing these bits here. Easy peasy. So for this section, you're going to have to remove these fins. This is going to be towards the top of it. It's going to be right there below the big fuselage. Okay, so continuing forward, just going to keep removing these half-size curve blocks that can go. Now, in addition to these half curved blocks, you could also get rid of these double fins, be they the half size or thin size double fins. So once we do that, we could also take these out. Okay. Continuing with the bottom section here. Boom. And oops. Now, if you wanted to, you get rid of that deco, and there's an additional placement. There we go. Could get rid of these thin blocks right here. These small 45-degree blocks. Single thin line, that'll do that. You're not going to want to remove this because this is leading to the inside, as well as this here. You don't want to remove that. That's a wall for a room. Okay. So once you do this, congratulations. You're the proud new owner of a flying gun. So that's going to be one of the characteristics of this thing, is not so much the strength on like a total turret count, but you know, if you want to operate as kind of like a surgical build where you have some precision over the player mounted weapons, yeah, there it is. See how many, what is our count there? Okay, so 29. So like essentially 30 mounted weapons, so you can distribute that however you feel between a mix of lasers, artillery, or maybe you want to do like a mining ship build. There are those out there that want to do that with this thing. Okay, so that is the conclusion of our mounted weapons. Another thing we want to look at here, last thing for Reforging players, is going to be our solar placement. It's a little bit janky. This solar is kind of a forethought, and there really wasn't that kind of aesthetic to accommodate that, nor was their interior. So now we could do like an external setting here that has to do with this next section. So getting started on that. What we're going to be looking for the start of our placement is going to be this white symbol here. This will be the line of demarc for where we're going to start with the large solar panels. Or I guess we should say standard size. So I would prefer, me personally, to have the solar panel side down just for the aesthetic value. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is could start out with some of the smaller ones. Now this configuration will be able to get you to a 48 total count. Oops. Okay, so that's all of the small ones. If we're not happy with having the aesthetic look of this thing here, so what we could do is roll that over, and now we can bury that. So it's sort of like a double stack going on. Okay. Now what we want to do is just conclude our placement by dropping these underneath. And there it is. That'll be our solar placement. So as I was alluding to earlier, this could serve as a hangar deck. I'm sorry, as a landing pad. And so just mount all along here any sort of SVs or maybe another CV or something to that effect, and be your walkway here to the command bridge if you want to fly off. So one of the other characteristics of it is it also supports the vertical mounting of ships along the neck. This is kind of canonical. If you've ever seen it within the original series or the original trilogy, the Millennium Falcon was parked there. So maybe you have an SV or perhaps even a smaller CV that you'd want to dock there. So let's look at that. Pull out something with, nope, not that one. Something with a docking pad or a landing gear on top of it. So maybe you'll have to retrofit some of your builds if you want to utilize that. And there it is. And so this is your entry point here. This is coming from the hangar section. This is going to be the docking airlock. So this will be your first floor. Yeah, ideally you want to do this in space. Alright, so now that you've bastardized the Nebulon B with solar placement, there's one last thing to look at. So one of the issues is that the hangar is here, and it's like, how do you get HVs in there? Or what can you do about that? It's not really going to be a thing. It's not going to be, it wouldn't make sense to lay it down. So here's what we have as a solution for that. It's kind of has something to do with what we just previewed there with the vertical mounting of our SV. So take our spaceship and park it here on the ground. So we have our HVs, and what are we going to do? Well, there are 2 locations here marked out for vertical mounting. At the bottom back of the forward midsection. That's like 4 directions I just named off. Yeah, so yeah, there we go. A pair of them. So if we wanted to do so, say for example, we have a induced speeder, then let's see if we can reach. There we go. And maybe we have something like the cataphract we'd want to use for the other position. Or whatever your HV of choice is. You find some way to strap a docking pad on the top of this thing, then you'll be good to go. Ideally, you're going to want some boosters to be able to shore up the gap there. This just depends on what the build is. Some of them will be able to reach there naturally, but if not, you're going to want some of the hover boosters. All right, so there it is. Now we're all packed up and ready to go. We got fighters all over the place. We got a pair of HVs and whatnot. We got weapons, weapons out the wazoo. So not too bad on pitch rolling, y'all. Well, maybe roll's kind of atrocious, but that just kind of has to do with the dimensions of the build with this vertical section. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude this Captain's Academy of the Kuwat Drive Yards Nebulon B frigate. Yeah, it's pretty good mid-level, mid-game sort of CV. Now I can operate as a latent in-game function as like as an escort frigate. Maybe it's something you want to do wolfpack tactics with some other players, maybe a pair of these or more. Or you could just ride along with their ship and provide some supporting fire. Pretty robust. It's able to solo some of the bigger baddies, like, Tavera, that sort of thing, etc. Once you've got like a Bastion shield in. Past that, some of the later stuff that eats up shields, maybe you might be a little bit of a fight with that. We do have a respectable placement of decoy system here. We've got our weapon here, and then maybe you want to utilize this front section for armoring and additional decoys. We've got a decoy thruster there, decoy generator. So all kind of designed to draw fire away from the player. This is kind of your citadel point right here. So with the forward weapon mounting, enemies will shoot for that before they shoot for some of these player-mounted weapons. So, yeah, there's a little bit of staying power with this thing. Pretty much this whole front section here, this is all combat steel or Xeno steel. And our compartments are reinforced with armor. So a little bit robust as far as like the armor and like that. But maybe late game you'd want something a little more dedicated, but as a support ship, it's pretty good as far as that role. So, all right, folks, that's gonna do it. I'll catch you all next time. LyfeForce out. All right, one last thing, folks, before we go. In regards to changing the color, we will have 5 color options. I just want to show you where I'm gonna have some LCDs placed on the interior of the ship where you could retrieve these colors, as well as it's going to be posted on a workshop page. So we want to get down to the forward bridge area, and then this room here, I'm going to have the LCDs posted for your color change options. And so once we grab our code, our numerical value that we're going to copy, so what we want to do is we want to hit configure, and up at the top left, we want to click that, and while holding down shift, at the bottom right corner, we're going to left click, go ahead and hit paste, and then we hit OK to confirm. And there we go. We've converted our color. All right, that's it, folks. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace out. Hello, folks. If you enjoy my content, if you enjoy my builds, please consider becoming a patron today. As a patron, you get access to custom builds of release works, early access to some builds before they hit the workshop, exclusive builds. You also gain access to direct feedback and engagement through polls, idea suggestions regarding builds before and after workshop release. If this interests you, please check out the pinned comment below. Thank you.